I'll go light on the retrospective because much of yesterday was spent discussing trade-offs between multiple modeling sorts. So we discussed three sorts of modeling supported by any logic: dynamics, agent-based modeling, and discrete event modeling. And we spent a fair bit of time talking about a distinction between what I consider one of the most salient issues in health specifically, which is sort of models of population health that are more aggregate in character versus those that are articulated at an individual level, where this individual level articulation could be specified either in terms of an agent-based characterization or a discrete event sort of formulation where you have entities representing people or any number of combinations between them. I emphasize this distinction because I think it's a very salient distinction in the health space where we're dealing with larger populations, and there's a long tradition, particularly in the infectious disease area, of building aggregate models, building models which are compartmental in character and in which count the number of individuals who are in a certain state or in a certain state of certain properties over time. And that tradition has greatly enriched discourse in the field. It's laid the foundations of mathematical epidemiology, particularly in the infectious disease area, and given a lot of insights related to herd immunity, related to this basic reproductive function or not, whether a situation is stable or not, whether you can expect an outbreak to occur or a slight disturbance in the number of infections, sort of rise in that to just die out, to damp itself out. And aggregate modeling is widely practiced, most commonly using what we would term system dynamics models in this context. System dynamics as a field or as a discipline is much broader than simply the model formalism. Any logic supports model formalism, but there's a whole set of additional processes associated with system dynamics modeling I'm not going into here. And I should emphasize that traditionally system dynamics modeling has put a strong premium on the modeling process and on stakeholder interactions. In fact, the sort of mechanisms you see in any logic, the stocks and flows we looked at yesterday, and an aggregate model, much of the reason that's used is because these are visual mechanisms that speak to people from all different backgrounds, and which can be understood by non-technical stakeholders, for example. And as a modeling approach, system dynamics is among dynamic modeling pretty much uniquely associated with a prioritization on achieving stakeholder buy-in, continued stakeholder interaction, and lending value from the modeling process from the very start. These are things that aren't really represented in per se by modeling frameworks such as any logic, but it bears noting that system dynamics models we see in any logic are typically part of a larger project, a larger enterprise, which involves stakeholder interactions, building understanding, delivering both qualitative and quantitative insights, using not only stock and flow models, but also things like causal loop diagrams. But the upshot of this is that often system dynamics is used with aggregate models. Often, that's sort of the most cases in health. You'll see system dynamics applied at an aggregate level, so you see stocks and flows being used at the level of the population. And agent-based modeling and discrete event modeling, by virtue of distinguishing particular individuals, are typically applied at the level of individual people. Okay? However, there are exceptions. You could have an agent-based model where the agents are institutions or organizations. So if we consider, interests in multi-sectoral coalitions, organizations. This could certainly be done. It wouldn't be at the level of individual people necessarily, although it could be. You could further have individuals in the community who are affiliated with particular nonprofits or particular sets of stakeholder organizations if you wanted to. The point is that agent-based modeling most commonly conducted where we have individual people distinguished system dynamics most commonly with aggregate modeling. However, within any logic, because of its flexibility, and even prior to that with some of the work conducted by a variety of researchers, we see that these are sort of rules of thumb and not always true. For example, we've done a lot of work with system dynamics operating at the agent-based level. Have published work for a number of conditions related to this, and we further will sometimes have discrete event modeling, for example, which is taking place in a context where you're not operating on people, but you're operating with some sort of other entities formed through an agent-based modeling conducted at a higher level as well. So I yesterday distinguished between aggregate and individual-based modeling of health because this is often the dilemma that people are, in my experience, this is the one people feel most confused about. Like, when do I make use of an aggregate model which counts the number of individuals in different states, and when do I make use of an individual level model? And I argued that it's a decision which certainly needs to put a strong premium on research questions, but also on skill sets available, also on the stakeholder, what speaks to stakeholders in terms of their understanding of what you're doing, their buy-in, as well as a number of other factors. So I was emphasizing this individual and aggregate distinction, not with the presupposition that aggregate is always SD and individual is always ADM, but more because this is sort of the salient distinction that people often grapple with most closely. So we talked about that quite a bit in the morning. We saw the glimpse of the several modeling types and examined some of these trade-offs here. Scott also helpfully showed some demonstrations of AnyLogic's animation capabilities, which are extremely powerful, and gave a glimpse of a whole sub-area of AnyLogic in terms of three-dimensional depictions of underlying states, as well as things like the pedestrian library, which we aren't directly featuring here, but which retains some relevance in the health area, not least with emergency preparedness or response. In the lunchtime, we heard two talks. One of them focusing on the use of a multi-scale model, which included individual level dynamics characterized by socks and gloves, characterized by hemoglobin levels and administration of erythropoietin, or erythropoietin stimulating agent, I should say, ESA, which is used to stimulate the avoid the apoptosis of red blood cells and therefore enhance red blood cell levels, and how that could be used in a clinical setting to report metrics similar to metrics reported in the real world for entire wards or for particular doctors by which the doctors are judged, and to examine the diffusion of innovation within a hospital or other hospital system in terms of adopting these novel practices related to management of anemia and agents. And we also, in response to a question, I also noted that very interesting fact that even though the model was decidedly circumscribed in what it contained, what it included, what it represented, the interesting thing is by capturing some of the most common causes for anemia, it allowed for spotting cases where individuals had other conditions which hadn't been noticed, which have been certain other conditions, whether it was growth of a cancer of some sort, or whether it was an iron deficiency, because it was just drowned out by this overall problem. Once they could really quantify what normal dynamics is according to sort of the stock and flows associated with normal production of normal levels of red blood cell maintenance, they could recognize, oh, there's something else going on here for the patient. We need to get it checked out, and that led to several patients being discovered and better managed for other conditions. Incidentally, the model, one of the things they are hoping, however, to add into the model is iron, because iron plays such an important role in sort of mediating some of those processes. So anyway, that was one of the talks at noon. The other talk focused on a very important recurrent issue having to do with representing agent behavior, specifically agent choice, decision-making on the part of agents. With many of us here from health background, others from veterinary science, and some others from different cognitive disciplines in social sciences, there's a lot of interest, very likely, in people's health behavior or behavior of other animals in terms of their behavior in the field. And what was articulated there was the use of a very rigorous formal methodology that's been codified over the years of discrete choice theory for representing, for modeling how, in this case, people make decisions in light of their preferences, and in fact, evolving preferences over time. And the reason this is so important is that one of the reasons it's very important is that certain interventions affect people's preferences, help evolve their preferences, or because you change the choice environment, you provide an extra incentive for this sort of behavior or disincentive for this adverse behavior, and you want to understand how will people's behavior change in response. All too often, folks, in these models that we built, we model people's behavior by specifying some observed level of decision making. So with certain probability, people, for example, start smoking, during these years. So there's a hazard rate associated with smoking initiation and late adolescence that on an age-specific basis rises and this sort of thing. So we can specify that for young men and young women. We can describe it like that. Now, it may be an adequate description of the current situation, but often when building the models, we're not simply seeking to characterize the current situation. We're seeking to ask what if. What if, how would that be different if we had an aggressive anti-tobacco promotion campaign? Suppose we had education in middle schools about the risks of smoking. Suppose we put warning packs on more labeling for cigarettes. Suppose that we ban billboards throughout the state of California promoting tobacco products. Suppose that we were to aggressively try to stop couponing campaigns by tobacco companies. How would that lower people's propensity to start smoking? That's often the flavor of question we want to approach. We want to explore with these models, these counterfactuals, things we haven't been able to directly observe or only been observed in certain isolated cases. And we're trying to make sense of that with our models. And so trying to understand how people's behavior would change in response to some of those interventions or in response to tobacco tax is front and center often what we're trying to get out of these models. We'd like to know if we levy an extra tax on tobacco, this is the sort of change we might see. And discrete choice theory is one of those choice modeling approaches that has proved very, very robust in certain areas, most notably in the marketing area, in not only providing a formal framework for decision making, whether it's sort of choice explicitly between all different set of exhaustive choices, or on the heuristic level, when people have certain heuristics they fall into and just repeat the heuristics. It has the requisite flexibility heuristic and decision making. And it has the capacity to formalize the survey instruments which are used to collect the data, parameterize those models. In this case, to parameterize the so-called beta coefficients, most notably, which are used to kind of weight different attributes of different choices. So to inform an understanding of heuristics people are using and of the weights they associate with different attributes. Alex from his work, particularly this summer as a third-year undergrad, had highlighted some of the major strengths of discrete choice theory, and we'll try to make sure that you folks get references if you are interested in that further. So those were some elements we saw yesterday. I led a Java tutorial toward the end of the days which explored Java expressions and Java statements. Java expressions are the formulae that compute values within Java. Values kind of make the Java world go round. They provide the quantities which are used to set the rates of expressions, to set the rates of events or the time between events, etc. And it's no distortion to say your models consists of massive choreography of values being used in different ways. And we're often asked to insert values within our models, or expressions that compute values, I should say, within our models. So expressions compute these values, and they're kind of like the formulas we use in Excel, writ large. Secondly, we talked about Java statements, which tell Java to do something, accomplish this thing. And maybe it's changing the value of a variable, changing the value of a variable, a parameter within a given agent. Maybe it's they tell this agent to connect to this other agent, for example. So we saw Java expressions and Java statements, and went through some common examples of each to help sort of lend reading to Java code. That Java tutorial further involved some very nice reflection on two fronts. One is I think what we're going to do is I'm gonna ask people who are interested to take a look at a model that I provided you as an example and try to kind of figure out what's going on, and then we can talk about what puzzles you about this model. So we can try to zero in on things that you're confused about. So I can address your particular confusion rather than just sort of giving a lecture on the basics. We could try to sort of work towards identifying what are the key barriers to your particular understanding of what's going on, appreciation of what's going on. So that'll be one thing. The second thing was how to lower barriers for learning the basic Java needed to build any logic models. How to make that process much easier. And we had some really good discussion. Scott was there and participated. Several others here also contributed ideas about what is it that fluxes you, and how could we lower those barriers? How could we provide hints or suggestions or links to material or example models or videos or what have you that would really ease that whole process of filling in those critical blanks within your model so that it does what you want it to do. We want to lower barriers to you, and we have quite a major program here led by my stalwart TAs who are trying to identify ways with exercises and with videos, very, very short Khan Academy-like videos to lower those barriers. I would welcome ideas from the broader group here, bearing in mind that not everyone was able to make it yesterday through the Java tutorial. Okay? So that was a bit of a retrospective. Any comments on that we need to make before we move on to a couple topics this morning that we need to get through? Nope. Okay. So thank you for your patience with that.